Again, thank you for joining us for this breakout session, Attention Deficit and Hyperactivity Disorder in the Classroom. Our guest facilitator today is Olaniyan Cash. Olaniyan was raised in Atlanta, Georgia, and Virginia. He's earned his bachelor's degree in biology from Morehouse College and his master's degree in Food and Nutritional Sciences from North Carolina Agriculture and Technical State University. Olaniyan has served as an educator for 5+ years in the role of middle school science teacher, in person and virtually, and the food and nutrition instructor for high school students. He is also currently serving as an adjunct instructor and a tutor. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. As you mentioned it and pronounced it correctly, thank you so much. My name is Olaniyan Cash, and the title of this presentation today is Attention Deficit and Hyperactivity Disorder in the Classroom. So before we get started, some of you may be familiar with my presentations. You know, I like to listen to music. During my presentations, I like to play that for y'all as well. I'm a deep lover of music. But since I do not own the copyrights of these songs, what I'm going to have to do is send you all my Spotify link for a playlist that you can play. Did it send? Okay. Oh, it did. Okay, I see it. Excuse me. So that you can listen with me. I'll be listening to I Love Music by Ahmad Jamal Trio, and that'll be on repeat. So please feel free to go to that Spotify link. There are other songs up there that I think aren't too vibrant and aren't too low vibration. You know, I think it's perfect to keep you engaged. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. Thank y'all for joining us. All right, so as a warm up, you know, I have a few activities in here, but I'm going to kind of breeze through them so I don't take up too much time because I know we're supposed to be ending around 3:45, right? Right. Okay. All right. So this was the idea of the warm up. It says a teacher has left the classroom and there are 20 students unattended. Okay. The teacher left detailed instructions for the students to stay silent, stay seated, and to continue working on their classwork. What can we expect to happen in the classroom once the teacher left? Okay. Please feel free to share your answers in the chat or share them out loud. Since we're breezing through them very quickly, I will give an example of from my experience, what's going to happen. I'm gonna come back to this classroom, and these students would have taken full control of the classroom. They are making up their own decisions. They're giving themselves their own assignments as far as what they're going to be doing in the classroom, and it is not going to be anything that I assigned them to do, right? But this is very similar to the experience of individuals with ADHD. So I'm going to touch back on this a little further in the PowerPoint to make more sense. Okay. All right. So give you a quick outline. I apologize because that is a little difficult to read, so I will touch that up next time. But it says my goal is for you to be more informed on ADHD, to understand some of the challenges that people with ADHD experience, to know how to better support students and educators living with ADHD, and then to be able to develop and implement strategies on how you can best provide support for students and educators living with ADHD. Now, I didn't mention this, but I, in fact, today am a representative of the ADHD community. So I've been diagnosed with ADHD recently, actually, but I have experienced the challenges that many folks who live with ADHD experience in my entire life, right? But I just thought I just needed to try harder or find a strategy that works for me. And believe me, I've tried more than likely everything that you can think of. Even still to this day, I'm still trying different strategies. Like there's got to be something that'll work. But these are serious challenges that we experience. And you'll also notice throughout this presentation, I'll refer to people living with ADHD or people who experience ADHD, and that is intentional so that we're not minimizing these people to ADHD and not saying, these are ADHD people. We are definitely more than just this diagnosis. This is just something that we experience, something that we live with. Excuse me. All right. Let's see here. All right. So this was another kind of activity is what do you imagine when you think about ADHD? And some of, let me see here, this is some of the ideas that may come to mind. Low attention span, restless, um, unorganized, jittery attention, lazy. In fact, there is a there's a metaphor that people have for people who experience ADHD, which is that they have like a squirrel brain, in the way, like, and I heard this, and before I became more informed on what truly characterizes the experience of ADHD, it I thought that this was accurate. I thought that this idea was accurate, but this squirrel brain is kind of like, that they see something, and now their attention's on that, and something else happens over here, and now they see that, and now their attention's on that. It's like that they have no control. Um, and a lot of times when people reveal or share that they experience ADHD or they live with ADHD, that can be a what people imagine that their experience is like and how they're going to be in class. They're just not going to be able to hold their attention. And I find that to be so inaccurate. In fact, I find the name attention deficit and hyperactivity to be so misleading. So misleading. So we're going to talk a little bit about that more throughout this presentation. So these are some of the misconceptions of people who experience ADHD, but let me give you a thorough background, so you can understand it more. All right, so it is one of the most common disorders in childhood. Now, I'm big on language, as I was referring to earlier, so I really don't even like to refer to it as a disorder. I prefer to refer to it as like a neurodivergent experience. It's just a different experience. But I think when we call it a disorder, I think it can be harmful to people who experience this on a day-to-day basis to think that that there's something wrong with them, right? It's just a different way of experiencing the world. Okay, but it is one of the most. I'm going to rephrase it. It's one of the most common diagnoses in childhood. Okay, it's considered a chronic and debilitating diagnosis, meaning that this is something that affects their everyday life and many activities throughout their day, and it can become debilitating because it can affect every little thing. So if you think about what takes place when you wake up, you have food, you have washing your face, brushing your teeth, taking a shower, ironing your clothes, packing up your bag to go wherever you're going to be going, and then you have to have conversations with people when you get there. You have expectations of you. These are things that people experience through their everyday life, and they think that this is just like this is the norm, like this is what we're all doing. But I'm laughing because I vividly remember having to write little things on my to-do list that are considered normal and considered that we do every day. But if I didn't put it on this to-do list, I may forget it. It may be as simple as brushing my teeth before I left for school, or ironing my clothes that morning, or packing my lunch. So it really is something that is truly affecting the everyday lives of people who experience ADHD, and many, if not most, of the activities that they are going to be engaging in throughout the day. Okay, so as far as the causes are unknown at this time. Many people sometimes will think that, it's got to be linked to the diet, people eating processed foods, and maybe they're watching too much TV, they're spending too much time on their phone, right? This is some things that people think, including parents, right? But this has not been scientifically linked or scientifically proven to be a cause of ADHD. Okay, but there is a possible link between ADHD and genetics. So if a parent or a grandparent experiences ADHD, it is highly likely that that child or that grandchild will also experience ADHD. So this is something that is being linked to certain genes. Okay, but as far as causes, we aren't aware of any causes at this time. There are a few types of ADHD, predominantly inattentive and predominantly hyperactive impulse, and then there's also the combined type. So when we speak of predominantly inattentive, that is, it's mistaken sometimes, or is misinterpreted sometimes as not being able to put your attention fully on things, right? But what from my experience, as a representative of the ADHD community today, and in fact, predominantly inattentive is what I've been diagnosed with. My experience is definitely not a lack of attention. It is that my attention is on many things, many things, and deeply into all of those things. So um, if I'm trying to focus on this one particular task, and there's all these other tasks going on, I'm trying to distribute my mental attention to all of these different things equally, but not performing in any of these different activities in the same way, right? Because my attention is now distributed a little too much, so it can be easier to just focus on one thing if I'm allowed to do that, right? But how often are we able to just focus on one thing for an extended amount of time, right? So predominantly hyperactive impulse is characterized by these individuals experiencing a lot of, I'm going to refer to it as energy, right? And that they need to release it somehow. They need to release it somehow. So in the classroom, that may appear as a student like moving a lot or fidgeting a lot and getting up and down, and maybe they're playing with their other classmates. But what I like to refer to it is that they have a lot of energy that's not being able to be released at this time, and we're asking them to kind of sit down and stay still and just think and just focus on what I'm saying. But if what you're saying isn't stimulating enough to this individual, or it's not grasping their attention enough, they need to get this attention out somewhere else, right? And that's what happens many times in the classroom. And then there's the combined type where you may experience both of these types of ADHD. Okay, as far as diagnosis, because even though I'm going to be informing you all, please don't think that we are capable of diagnosing ourselves or other people around us. The diagnosis is a comprehensive evaluation. Typically includes a review of past and current symptoms, a medical exam and history, and use of adult rating scales and checklists. So there's a very thorough process that is typically administered by someone who has been trained for this, right? This is a trained, specialized therapist, psychologist, a psychiatrist, right? They are able to make this diagnosis, not us. Even if you do experience these things and you think like, oh, that's me, please check with someone who is more qualified to give you a medical diagnosis, okay? So what the picture I have here, the image, is just showing that I'm trying to illustrate that ADHD is from my experience and what I've been learning about ADHD, is very much a spectrum. Okay, so even though we're going to be learning like some parts of that experience, it is not to be limited to what we're sharing. Right, every individual is going to experience this a little differently. So if we were to look at that Venn diagram as the experience of ADHD, that individual can fall anywhere in that Venn diagram and have a particular an experience that's particular to them. Okay, so it's important that we connect and communicate with those students or those individuals to understand better from their perspective what they're experiencing and what they need to feel more supported. All right. Okay, let's see here. All right. These are some common symptoms. I have so what I tried to do is I tried to reframe some of these symptoms, and then also give some question marks to give you maybe an opportunity to think of how could that be reframed. Okay, and again, this is because I think. Oh, wait a second. I think the there's a lot of misinterpretations about the experience of people with ADHD. So I want to look at that a little bit more. Okay, you have trouble paying attention. Like I said before, I am typically putting my attention on tons of different things in deeper ways than many of the other individuals that I discuss these things with. I'm like, y'all aren't thinking about this. Y'all don't spend a lot of time thinking about this and digging through this. So I really there's little that I have trouble paying attention to, right? But so I reframed that. I would say that my attention and interest is on many things, and I don't have an abundance of time to just focus on this one thing that you want me to focus on. There's other things going on. I got to eat at some point, right? I got to prepare food at some point. I have a family that I am very active in. So, there's a lot of other things going on that my attention, that I'm also trying to give a significant and sufficient amount of my attention to. Okay. There's one symptom as trouble controlling impulsive behavior. Um, I reframe that as maybe they're not being stimulated enough to plan or prepare for this thing that you want them to do. So maybe they just feel like they needed to go ahead and try this thing. So let me give you an example. A lot. I do the cooking for our household, and I enjoy cooking. I love to cook, but I do not always have the capacity to plan and prepare this 3-course meal. Just all the intricacies and the textures and the color and the presentation. I'm like, a lot of times when I go in that kitchen, I'm like, we're just gonna go in that kitchen. We're gonna figure something out, and this is gonna taste good, and you're gonna enjoy it, right? So they may be mistaken as, oh, he's just being impulsive. He just walks in the kitchen and puts things together. It's like, I don't have the capacity right now to plan this out and do this the next day and the next day and the next day, while I got all these other things that I'm focusing on. Right? So there's also overly active, which can be reframed as challenges focusing all or most of their energy or their attention on this activity, right? They could be daydreaming a lot. That can just be, so if you have a student and you feel that experiences ADHD in a classroom and you think that they're just daydreaming a lot, they could just be losing interest or stimulation in what you're saying, right? Or in the information that's being presented. Or there could be something else that's getting that is grasping their attention, right? So I think it's important, again, that we are making sure that we're centering these individuals in their experience, because this left column, I think, is an interpretation that centers our own interpretation of what's going on, right? But if we can communicate with these individuals and ask questions and develop a better understanding, we can center them in their experience, which should be the case, right? Who wants to have someone telling you about your experience and what you're experiencing? Okay, so I think it can be very helpful if we keep that in mind when we are engaging with students who experience ADHD. Forgetting or losing things, they could just be at their mental capacity, right? They could just have reached their limit, and now I just need to kind of recenter and recharge before I can start being expected to hold on to all of these little bits of information and little things, right? So another example of that is if we live with the Labradoodle, we take care of the Labradoodle, and I try. Like, if I am experiencing too much, I'm thinking about too much as we're going out the house, I could easily lock ourselves out, right? Like, if I'm having a rough week, rough meaning like there's a lot going on that I'm trying to balance, and I'm struggling to balance a little bit. I've locked my keys in a car twice or 3 times that week, and it's like, goodness, like, what is going on? But I'm at my capacity. You know what I mean? So if I don't adjust, or if I'm not able to respond to that accordingly, then I'm probably am going to be forgetting or losing things. But that is only a consequence of me being at my mental capacity, at my limit. Right? Then you have squirming and fidgeting, which I can rephrase as not maybe they're needing to release all this energy that they're experiencing. They need to just release it somewhere. Okay. And then you have talking too much, could be the same thing. Careless mistakes or unnecessary risks could be that they're not stimulated enough by the act of reviewing this information. So a good example of this is sending an email. Like I said, I try to be very intentional with my words. So, when speaking through writing, whether it's text message or email, a lot of that information can be misinterpreted, right? The tone can be misinterpreted in how you're saying things. So I spend a lot of time making sure that what I'm saying can be more easily understood, right? But that takes a lot of time and energy. And if I got 10 emails that I'm trying to get out and I got other things that I'm trying to do, I might just, need to send this very quickly, and maybe there'll be a typo here, maybe be a typo there. Maybe I wasn't as kind as I'm usually am, with saying all the nice greetings and everything. And that's literally could just be that I'm at my limit, or I'm not feeling stimulated enough to go through the act of reviewing all of this information and making sure that it looks, perfect, right? Excuse me. Having trouble taking turns is another one, which is similar to that they may be trying to hold on to this energy that they're experiencing, and they're trying to hold on to this thought and pay attention to what you're saying. But they're like, oh, but let me just throw this out there right now before I forget it, right? How many that will happen a lot of times in conversations, and some people it may be misinterpreted as, oh, they're speaking over me, they're not listening to me. They could just be trying to get this, share this with you before they forget it. Because they're trying to focus intently and very carefully on what you're saying. Okay. Again, this is just some common symptoms, and rephrasing them in a way that centers that individual. Okay, as opposed to ourselves. All right, so let's keep it going. This is what I would deem a very elaborate chart. Okay, elaborate graph. So I'm gonna try to walk you through it. I prefer to give you a little bit of time to try to adjust your eyes, but I don't want to hold us up too long. So I'm gonna try to break it down. All right, so this is situational variability in ADHD. On the left bar is a non-ADHD brain, and on the right bar is an ADHD brain. So typically, if a person with a non-ADHD brain, even if the task that they're being assigned to do or that they're trying to do isn't really interesting to them, right? They're still able to tap into whatever they need internally to be able to focus, to be able to get this activity done, right? So we see the bottom bar as hyperfocus, meaning they don't have enough interest or stimulation to be able to focus yet. But then they reach that activation point and they're able to fully engage in this activity. So now we're in the intentional focus area, okay? And you can see on the left-hand side, whether it's a boring task or engaging task or a super fun task, they're still able to be their focus intentionally. They're able to focus intentionally, right? That's a large bar, right? They're able to do a lot of different activities easily, fairly easily. And then, of course, they're able to hyper focus if it's an amazingly fun task. They're able to like really zone in on this task. Okay. Now, there's a car there. There's a car there. This is like them driving. They're able to drive easily. Okay. For a person with an ADHD brain, that hyper focus area is a lot larger, right? Which means that there's going to be something that needs to be a lot more interesting or a lot more stimulating for them to reach that activation point where they're able to engage fully in this task, okay? So we're going to get a little higher than this boring task. We're going to get closer to, becoming more engaging where we can now focus intentionally, okay? And that's a small area. We're able to hyper focus though if it's very engaging and it's very fun to us, okay? But even that hyper focus can become consuming of their energy, and right, and they can very quickly reach their capacity. So to even break that down further, a non-ADHD brain is like driving a vehicle that there's no issue driving. You get in the car works normally. You drive and you get to your destination. An individual with an ADHD brain, that same activity is like pushing that car, right? So think, I want us to keep that in mind when we are comparing the performances of individuals who experience ADHD and individuals who don't, right? They're not competing the same way, right? This individual on the left-hand side is able to drive that car. This individual on the right-hand side is having to push that car, okay? And we're expecting them to do it at the same capacity that this individual on the left side. And I don't think that's fair, right? Okay, so when they are able to get into that intentional focus, they are able to be driving now, and then they maybe can reach a hyper focus, which can be very productive, right? But again, it can also be very draining of them doing anything else after that. So a lot of times for me, when I got to the classroom, I'm ready to teach. Like instantly stimulated by the kids being there and me having to interact with them and trying to care for them and be attentive to them. Like I'm instantly like engaged, right? And to the point that I'm hyper focusing now. Like there's nothing else going on outside this classroom, right? There's no world, there's nothing else that exists outside of this classroom right now because I'm focusing all my attention here. But a lot of times that will lead to the point where now I'm not even able to register my own appetite. You know, I'm so in hyper focus mode. I'm so in like overdrive mode that I don't have the capacity to attend to myself. You know, a lot of times I would miss lunch because I'm still stuck in this zone that I'm trying to just get to the end of the day with. Right, I'm trying to continue to perform to my highest ability throughout the rest of the day. But at some point, we do need to eat, right? So it's just to give an example of what that experience could be like. Okay, if I know I'm moving a little quickly, but if there are any questions while I'm running through this, please feel free to share in the chat or raise your hand. I definitely want to answer your questions. Okay. Um, this was an activity to kind of give an example of the challenges that someone may experience with ADHD. So this was supposed to be like timed, like you have like 7 seconds to say all of these words, the color that's around the word, and then say the word. And that was a fun activity for students in the classroom, as a nice little brain break. But I don't think we have time for that today. But I encourage you, if as you're watching, or to take a screenshot or to pause it when you're watching the recording, to challenge yourself to see if you can put a 7-second timer on and to see if you can get through all of these words saying the color. Let me see, like a yellow, blue, red, brown, green, yellow, pink, black. If you can say all that very quickly in the 7 seconds, this is similar to a challenge of focusing on many different things at once that individuals with ADHD may experience. Okay? All right, so let's keep it going. We talked about some of the symptoms, the common symptoms, but one of the major symptoms that affects many individuals who experience ADHD, their everyday life and majority of their activities, is deficits in executive functioning. Okay, so what is executive functioning? We talked about that warm up, right? Like if you leave the classroom unattended, what do you expect these students to do, right? Executive functioning is having someone who's going to be in charge, who's going to be saying, hey, this is what we're going to be doing, this is how we're going to do it, this is when we are going to plan for it to be done. For the individuals who experience ADHD, one of the major symptoms is that there is no ADHD, there is no executive, there's no person in that boss chair being able to regulate everybody, right? So this is I thought it was a funny picture because like who's in charge here? Like what are we supposed to be doing? Like we know we have things we got to do. We have as I'm thinking about like waking up in the morning, like we have the dog to walk, we have breakfast to make, we have lunch to make, we have dinner to make at some point. Maybe something needs to be cleaned. Somebody I have emails to respond to, maybe some texts to respond to, right? But it's if there's all these things here and there's an inability to lead, right? To lead that all of your cells or yourself to do these activities, then you're just kind of getting bogged down with all of these activities that you're not finding the capacity to initiate doing, right? So to go back, it might be on the next slide for me, to go back, this is like similar to that activation point. If there is like, before that activation point is reached, there is nobody, it's like pushing that car. There's nobody driving that car. We have to push it, right? That's a heavy load to push, Okay, so, and I also want to clarify that, because again, one of those misinterpretations of people who experience ADHD is that they're lazy, that they daydream a lot. Many times if I'm ever sitting still and thinking about something, I am trying to figure out how I can do X, Y, and Z, right? And so it's not a lack of it's not a lack of what's the word? These people aren't incapable of doing these things, right? It has nothing to do with their capabilities, their intelligence. There is literally nobody sitting in that seat able to direct and push their bodies in the direction of whatever the activity is to do. They have to push the car. There's nobody going to be driving that car in most scenarios, especially if they're not interested or stimulated enough. They have to force themselves to do the thing, and then they have to force themselves to continue doing the thing until it's done. Right? That takes an incredibly large amount of energy, right? And then you're expecting them to do something after that. They still have the rest of the day to still perform and complete activities in. Okay, so this is another image. If you see them daydreaming, please don't think that they're just like, not being productive mentally. Their gears are turning most times than not, right? Their gears are turning. They are trying to process and trying to figure out, what can I do? How can I do it? It's like a creative activity every day. It's like, how can I approach this in a way that's going to engage me enough and stimulate me enough to get this thing done, right? This is daily. This is daily, and this is what most activities throughout the day. So thank you. So this is just a quick image. And this is also just another illustration, because another metaphor of people who experience ADHD is that they have spoons, and they refer to it as spoons, like they have a limited amount of spoons for each activity for their entire day, and they have to divvy them up through these different activities. So if I wake up and I have 5 spoons and I need to walk the dog, that's going to take 2 spoons. Okay, so now I'm down to 3 spoons, and I got to make breakfast. It's going to take another 2 spoons. Now it's only 10 o'clock now, right? There's a full day ahead of me, a lot of activities to get done, and all I did was walk the dog and make breakfast. You understand? So now I'm left to 1 spoon left, and that's going to be done probably with me getting ready to go to wherever I need to be. So I parallel that with it being currency. We don't have the same currency to exchange for these different activities. Individuals who don't experience ADHD may wake up and feel just like they have the capacity to do all these things. They have the currency to exchange for these activities. But people with ADHD, many of them don't have what's needed to exchange to complete that activity. But some more just ideas for treatment: the psychotherapy, behavioral therapy, medication, a combination of all of them, and then managing symptoms. Again, these don't cause ADHD, but they can help mitigate the symptoms that people with ADHD experience, such as eating healthy foods, exercise, adequate sleep, limiting electronic usage, receiving coaching and guidance, having supportive systems and relationships, maybe modifying your environment, your living and situational arrangements. For instance, we have a bin in the house where it's like a dump bin. We have a lot of dump bins because, like, if I have to do this every single day, I'm not going to get anything done as far as cleaning the house. So if there is a place where I can just put a bunch of things and shove it away, and I can put a bunch of things over here and shove it away, and maybe we'll organize it later. But at least it's going to make it visibly less overwhelming. Excuse me. All right, so things that we can do to support those with ADHD in the classroom. You can make it more interesting, make the lesson, make sure it's very interesting, make it engaging. So you can include different activities, brain breaks. For instance, this music that I'm playing that maybe y'all are listening to, or maybe that y'all checking out, this thing keeps me going. Okay, especially when we're teaching via Zoom, because sometimes people have their cameras on, sometimes they don't. Sometimes you can see them fully when you're looking at your screen. Sometimes you just see your slides. So I'm not able to get that feedback that really stimulates me, that I get in the classroom. I can see the faces, and I'm like, oh, they don't get that. Let me explain that a little further. Or I can recognize that people are getting a little tired, right? But this music, I'm telling you, this music keeps me going, and I definitely play it in the classroom to help with engagement. You can also engage with some areas of genuine interest and passion for these individuals. You can find out what's interesting to them, incorporate that into the lesson. You can add stimulating components in the lesson. I don't know if you recognize, but there was a lot of different fonts and colors in this slide, and it's kind of just it activates my brain if I see it. If I just see this font that's on this screen, on every single screen, especially if I'm like in the audience, like I'm losing my interest. Okay, so definitely changing the font up, changing the color, maybe including some animations to stimulate them. You can add fun challenges like quick time activities like the one earlier. You can incorporate competitions or challenges in your lessons to keep them engaged. Of course, adding humor and novelty helps. You can collaborate with them. I refer to this as body doubling, which is remember we talked about the executive functioning, many people with ADHD not really having or having a lack of executive functioning. So for instance, if I'm trying to cook, like I said, I love cooking. It's the thing that I'm passionate about. But like trying to like that car, there's nobody in that driver's seat, right? So sometimes I might, ask the wife of the house to come down. Can you come down and just like be nearby? That'll give me enough stimulation. But okay, I can. I don't know why, but it activates me enough to engage in this activity. So I encourage you to consider that when you're assigning students an assignment. If they're going to be working on their own, maybe they have a partner that they're going to be working alongside with, or maybe they can be working next to you while you're working, right? Or you can encourage them to do this at home with their parents. Hey, parents, while y'all are working on bills or sending emails, maybe try to bring your student a little closer. Maybe they can finish their work while you're working. So it doesn't need to be doing the exact same activity, but if you're both being productive, working on something together, it can help stimulate them in that way. Similar to people going to a cafe or a library to study, being in that environment where other people are kind of doing the same thing helps. All right. Let's see. Differentiate assignments or proof of understanding. Maybe using a different way for them to submit assignments. Some maybe like through a song or a video submission that can really engage them in a way as opposed to only being limited to writing assignments. Okay. All right, let me keep it going. All right. Additionally, we can balance structure and flexibility. So for me, for example, like I said, I'm going throughout my whole day trying to figure out how I can do all these different things. But if I have too much structure, I'm going to feel boxed in and like I don't have enough opportunity to experience the emotions and everything that I'm going to be experiencing throughout the day. So I need some flexibility, but not too much flexibility. It's like that sweet spot that was on that graph, that small bar of when they were engaged in the activity. That to me is like finding a sweet spot between structure and flexibility. So what this can look like when you're providing them assignments, you can give a deadline, for example, but still allow them to submit after the deadline. But just having that deadline may push them a little, may stimulate them enough to complete this assignment by that time. But you'll have a little bit of flexibility, so if they don't, or if they're a little late, they're still able to perform. Okay. You can use several reminders, timers that include descriptive details of what to do. So not just a general reminder, like, well, we don't want them to have to think about what exactly we're supposed to be doing now. Give them some reminders. This can be like if you have an essay assignment that's due on Friday, maybe having them submit the first 2 paragraphs by Tuesday and the up to the conclusion by Thursday, so that you can review it with them and then make any changes as necessary. Of course, you can incorporate breaks for fun, for music, for example. You can encourage unavailable time, so when they're working, maybe that they can turn their phones off and put on Do Not Disturb, so that they don't lose that stimulation that they work so hard to obtain, right? And then you can add helpful stimuli such as fidget toys, so that they can get some of that energy out, so that they can better focus on whatever you're saying. Maybe bouncy ball chairs or bean bags or couches to just offer more comfort and more something that's more stimulating that can help them be more engaged and be more present. Okay. Even allowing them to stand up if they want to, or lay down, right? If it's comfortable on the ground. Silent headphones can work if they need to be working audibly. Music in the classroom, live or loop screensavers. I prefer live screensavers. Like I'll look at it can be a video of a farm and just seeing just something that's just going to be moving and not going to be repeating itself. Like that's stimulating enough for me to continue focusing on whatever the assignment was. Okay, and of course, move it in the classroom. All right, we're reaching the final few minutes. Strategies that you can immediately use, because some of those before are going to take a little bit of the time and preparation. But you can take frequent brain breaks during class. That could be for healthy or tasty snacks or drinks, or for music breaks like a song break, 3-minute break, right, for a song. Play background music during class that falls into that sweet spot where it's not too stimulating, but it's not too little stimulation where it's going to put them to sleep. right? We can add more checkpoints throughout the completion of assignments, so it's not just one big deadline, it's not just one big objective. They can have multiple checkpoints that can monitor or help them progress towards the completion of this assignment. You can assign earlier deadlines for these individuals, because if we're already going to be struggling to meet the deadline, then maybe assign an earlier deadline so that gives them a little cushion just in case they're late. Offer more rewards and more consequences. Consequences not to be confused with punishments, but just like okay, we need to check in. How can we better work towards completing this assignment? Strategically assigning study partners or buddies for assignments so that they can work alongside someone. And then lastly, and I think maybe even the most important, offer more grace, patience, and opportunities for improvement and support. Remember, this isn't a lack of capacity to perform, right? As far as like they're not incapable of performing or incapable of showing the things that they know. They might just have a hard time with doing it in the way that you're asking them to do it. So offering more grace, patience, opportunities for improvement and support can be extremely helpful. Okay, this was an example of the fidget toys. I would recommend something that doesn't make noise and won't be distracted to other classmates. But this is something that they could just spin. Most of these don't make too much noise. So they can just spin and they can continue focusing on what you're saying while you're teaching. The squeeze ball or stress balls, they can be squeezed during class. They're going to be less distracting as well, but it can allow them to get that energy out while still being able to focus on what you're saying. All right, so in summary, ADHD is the most common. What do we rephrased that word, disorder? We said something different, but most common in children and can affect them in their daily life and over a long period of time. Major symptom is a deficit in executive functioning. And here's the general strategies that you can implement: more breaks, more helpful stimuli, more check-ins and checkpoints, more collaboration, more grace, patience, and support. Okay. All right. I think we have made it to the end just within 30 seconds of the timer. Good. So if I have any questions,
Excellent.
comments, or concerns, please share in the chat or out loud. And I will pass it on.
Yeah, it sounds like for the virtual setting, just kind of taking these, especially engagement is key. And I'm hearing, more structure, and maybe sharing strategies home with students and with families. And I think, like you said, you can't self-diagnose. You can't see
Right.
teachers like, you probably have this. Here's some strategies. Like, don't do that. But overall, I think these are good strategies for any of our kids. And I'm thinking about a lot of things.
Yeah.
Julie, do you have any questions before we jump back to the main room?
No, I just want to say thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for your attention.